This is Notes in the Margin, a podcast for people who are super excited about writing their nonfiction book, but perhaps, just perhaps, aren't quite doing it. If you always feel called to tile the bathroom or clean the toilet instead of writing your book, you are in the right place. Your host, Vicky Quinn Fraser, has been there, done that, and has literally written the book about it. Join Vicky and her husband Joe as they make notes in the margin about creativity, writing techniques, publishing, and general shenanigans, and get tips and tricks to help you write your book. Hello and welcome to Notes in the Margin. I'm Vicky Quinn Fraser and I am here today on my own because we have not recorded a new podcast this week. Instead, I have a RePod for you, a reissue of a podcast that we actually recorded about a year ago, entitled How Long Will It Take? Because that is a question I often get asked, is how long will it take me to write my book? And the answer is usually somewhat unhelpfully, don't know, it's going to take as long as it takes you, which is actually a reasonable answer, as you will discover. But I wanted to share this podcast again because in that issue, we were talking about kind of a big book, a 50 to 80,000 word book, and how long that might take to do. But I have been concentrating recently on micro books, teeny tiny books, and they can be done much, much quicker, as you will know if you've been listening to my podcasts recently, because I've just finished my very first micro book magic course in November, and you can listen back to last week's episode if you want to hear some of the books that came out of that. And that was a lot of really amazing people who produced an incredible micro book each within the space of about 4 to 6 weeks. So you can do that. It's possible. Anyway, have a listen to this episode. I hope you enjoy, and I will see you at the end. Hello.
Hello.
Hello and welcome to the 1000th Authors Show. I'm Vicky Quinn Fraser and this is my husband Joe.
Hello.
And the reason we're laughing is because literally as I pressed record then, Joe burped. I don't think it was caught on the beginning of the podcast, but it was good timing.
Excellent. Thanks.
You're welcome. So how you doing, Joe?
I'm all right. I'm a bit tired. I've just had 3 days on site in Coventry.
Oh dear.
Doing some things.
Sorry to anyone who's listening from Coventry, but I used to live there for quite a long time, so I get to go, oh dear.
And yeah, we're working quite hard. My brain aches a bit.
Did it go well though?
Yeah, I mean, I could go into details, but yes, it has kind of worked on quite well.
Good.
Clever things have started working.
Oh, good. Are you one of them?
Yes. I started on Monday and I've had fair success.
Awesome. Good skills. And what are you reading at the moment?
Ooh,
Have we jumped into that too quickly? Do we normally do preamble?
That was more preamble normally. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm confused. I'm a bit annoyed actually because I did my handstand training earlier.
Right.
I'm in a handstand training group, and that was great. And then I was like, oh, shall I do the stretch class that I normally do on a Wednesday evening? And I was like, had a quick look at where you were on the Stalky app, and you were more than an hour away. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll book onto the stretch thing.
Okay, you were pleased I was nowhere near.
No, but I was just like, well, are you going to get home in the middle of the stretch class, or are you going to get home, turn that over so you're not staring at it, or are you going to get home, when, anyway, I left it you have to book on at least 5 minutes before the class starts, and I left it too late. Sad times.
That was an amazing story. I liked it.
It wasn't really, was it?
No.
Sad times.
What are you reading, Vicky?
I'm reading Thud by Terry Pratchett. I've nearly finished it.
Okay.
And I'm also reading, which is obviously great because I love Terry Pratchett. And I'm also reading, I have finally started reading The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker.
Cool.
And it's really, well, I've literally hardly read any at the moment, but so far it's really great. And I had a really good point that I was going to bring up in the podcast as oh, that's a cool thing, and I've forgotten it. So
okay,
maybe next week.
Or maybe not.
Maybe not. What are you reading?
So I've quite enjoyed Ursula Le Guin's Father Shaw series of books. It's all a bit light and easy, but it's very nice. And I just started the third one of those, which is called Powers.
Powers? Let me update my sheet.
It's Gifts, Voices, and Powers are the 3 books.
Okay, cool. Do you like Ursula K. Le Guin? She's awesome.
Yeah, she is.
So, and yeah, this week at Casa Dingle, there is water everywhere because
Everything leaks.
Everything leaks. Following Storm Arwen a week or so ago, we've just had Storm Barra. Storm Barry.
And the wind is blowing in a different direction because we didn't get all the water last week.
We did not.
But this week we've got lots of water.
Yeah. And so, yeah, water has been pouring in through our windows.
Nice.
Which is not ideal. That's what windows are supposed to not do. It's coming in over the top. Yeah. There are reasons for it.
To do with oak shrinking over time and things sort of being built and then settling and all that kind of stuff. So it's...
Yeah, and we've just been unlucky this week because the wind has been coming in exactly the right direction to fire water horizontally into the house. But still, we need to fix that because
we do.
The house was full of fucking water earlier. So that was fun. But over the weekend, we made our house bigger.
Yeah.
We have, as you may know, the saga of the Dingle bathroom continues. We are getting closer. Slowly but surely getting closer. We have ceilings. Joe put his foot through the ceiling.
I fell through a ceiling.
Joe fell through the ceiling,
nice.
So that was exciting. He was not hurt, thankfully. But there was quite a mess and a lot of swearing. And the ceiling is now fixed, so that's fine.
Luckily, we hadn't plastered it or painted it or done anything with it. We just put the boards
God,
up.
That would have been annoying. So, but I mean, it's entirely our fault because for the last few weeks, ever since we've had the floor structure, and we've been unable to close the door if the temporary boards were right up to the doorway. And so every time we've kind of we must just take an inch off this door because the door is going, it's not staying.
It's just there for thermal and drafty reasons now. And
every time we'd be like, right, we must adjust this door so that we can actually close it, and then we'd be like, oh, can't be bothered. And then Joe put his foot through the floor, so that's our fault. And my dad was like, right, I'm taking the door off the wall and I'm going to take an inch off the bottom of it, which is exactly what we should have done weeks ago.
Yes.
So now nobody will put their feet through the floor again, and it's kind of fine.
But what we did achieve over the weekend, because we now have a bathroom ceiling and we have some insulation on that above that ceiling, we bought some loft boards.
Yeah.
And we boarded out the loft.
Yeah.
And did a lot of hoovering up there, de-spidered it a lot, debattered it a bit.
We did not do a lot of hoovering up there.
Vicky
I did
a lot,
literally all the hoovering up there. I filled 3 full Hoover bags full of kind of lime dust and brick dust and bat poo and dead squirrels and things like that. I don't think it's ever been quite as tidy. Hoovered all of the undersides of the roof, the joists, everything. And then I pretty much single-handedly laid all the loft boards, actually, didn't I? Because you and Dad were cutting and I was measuring, and you and Dad were cutting and passing them up to me. And I was pretty much, I think you did a little bit of screwing in. But yeah, I pretty much laid the loft boards single-handedly. I was quite pleased by that. So we're gonna need to take some of them up and put them back again when we come to do a little bit of wiring, but we shouldn't need too much.
Not much.
But yeah, we've got all this space up there now. So we put all of our camping gear up there. We've put some boxes of books up there, old paperwork that Joe is keeping for reasons that I don't quite understand, and bits and just my sewing stuff that I don't really use, but I might at some point, and that kind of thing. So it's made a big difference, actually.
The kind of stuff that should be in an attic, really, but has been all over the house, and we hoover around it and we pick it up and we move it and we put it somewhere else and we hoover around it, and then and you're just like, oh god, this should be somewhere else. We've had nowhere to put it, and now we've got somewhere to put it.
I know, and it's great as well because one of the things that has bothered me is that I've got a lot of books, unsurprisingly. I've got a lot of books. I am going to get rid of some of them because some of them I know I'm never going to read again, but the majority of them I want to keep. They're going to go in my library, or our library, when the library is built. But until the library is built, there's just a lot of books, and they are, at the moment, all over the place, and they're gathering dust, and that's not good for books, and I don't like it. So now we've got a proper space where I can box them up nicely, dust-proof them, and just put them up there until I've got proper bookshelves to put them in.
Can you tell, dear listener, that we are quite excited about our new loft?
Yeah, I'm really excited about my new loft. It's and I'm even more excited because today I packed up another box of bits and pieces that can go up in the loft, and I was like, oh, we don't need to give away this bookcase at all. This bookcase can go up into the loft as the shelf system that we were talking about building to give us even more space up in the loft.
We need to be careful we don't just because boxes are heavy.
Yes.
We need to not just stack up, 3/4 of a ton of stuff in the same area and collapse the ceiling.
That ceiling is stronger than 10,000 bears.
It's stronger than almost anything in the rest of the house, but it's not as strong as the ground on the ground floor.
Well, that's true. Anyway, that's not what they did not tune in to hear about our loft, Joe.
I think people do. I think people are most interested about the dingle, really.
How dare you?
And the sheep.
How dare you?
How are the sheep?
The sheep are adorable. I went up to see them earlier and I took them some treats, and Picard tried to eat all of the treats. Koenig eventually had some treats, although he gave them a good sniffing at first. Bronson did not want any treats, but he did want to prevent the other two from having treats.
Okay. Fair.
So, because he's kind of a dick. So that was fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, right. So this week we're talking about how long it's going to take you to write a non-fiction book.
9 months.
No.
Okay.
I mean, maybe. Who the hell knows? If I'm going to be completely honest, I could be like, I don't know how long it's going to take you to write a non-fiction book, but that's not the purpose of this podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to give you a vague idea, well, a kind of a rough timeline, an idea of how long it might take you.
Okay.
So I thought we would do that because I think it might be quite useful for people to get an idea. And what I can tell you is that you are not going to be able to write and publish a good book in 30 days. Despite what some people on the internet may tell you. The reason for that will become clear as we go through. And I'm not talking about people publishing pamphlets and tiny books, because it is possible to write a good tiny book in a short amount of time and kind of publish it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about heftier books. So with that, let's dive into a few kind of facts. So the average non-fiction book, what's the length of an average non-fiction book, Joe?
50,000 words.
Yeah, like most of them are 45 to 55,000 words. So I know you read that and then picked the number in the middle, but still, that's cool. So we can break that down. So I used to have a course called Published in 90 Days, which was a bit of a misleading title, to be honest, which is part of the reason why I don't sell that course anymore. But it was absolutely possible to write a decent book in 90 days. Definitely the first draft, if not the edits. If you're writing a really short book, like a mini book, then you can 100% write and publish that in 90 days. But we're talking about, a 55,000 word book here.
Okay.
So let's break it down. Let us break it down. 55,000 words over 90 days is how many words per day, Joe?
If I take my shoes and socks off to help with the maths, it is about 611.11 words per day.
That was, yeah. Joe did not just do that in his head. I've done all of these. I did all these calculations earlier. It's like Blue Peter.
Yeah, I mean, Vicky did all these calculations earlier, so who the hell knows whether they're right.
I used the calculator. So yeah, if you write every day, like no weekends off, no days off or anything, no breaks, then 611-ish words per day will get it done.
Yeah, okay.
If you have weekends off...
Oh, that would knock it up to like 833 point something.
833.33 words per day. Which is also a very doable goal, right? But it doesn't take into account all the stuff that goes with writing a book. And that, I'm going to come to that shortly, because this is really important. And this is one of the things that frustrates me when I see this kind of thing on, bandied around on the internet. Oh, you can do this, that, and the other in so many days. And it's like, but can you though? Can you really? Because it's not just sitting down and banging out, 800 words a day.
You can't use the same word 800 times and say you've, fulfilled your quota.
No, I hadn't even thought of that, but no, I mean, I bet if you're Stephen King and he filled an entire book with, like, the word flange, people would probably buy it. Like that album, Silence album. Who did the album of Silence?
I have no idea.
Somebody did, and people bought it.
Okay.
Like it was a bestseller. Anyway, so back in the room. Publishers and printers think in word counts, but writers tend to think in chapter counts or stories, because that's how we organise ourselves, right? So I can say 55,000 words, and to most people listening, and to me, that's just like, well, that's a lot of words. I don't know what to do with that information. Don't want to start, blah. So let's instead think about breaking it down into chunks that we can deal with more easily. So let's say that your book is going to have 10 chapters because that is an easy number for me to do maths with.
Sure.
And it's going to have an introduction and a conclusion at the very least. It will probably have some other bits and pieces as well, but let's keep it real simple. And let's say then each chapter will have 5,000 words.
5,000 words times 10, 50,000 words.
And so therefore, maybe your introduction and conclusion are going to have around 2,500 words each.
Okay.
Taking it up to 55,000 words.
That's one.
Suddenly that sounds a little bit more doable apart from anything else. It's like, 5,000 words. I can do that 10 times. That doesn't sound as much as 55,000 words.
I could write, 5,000 words in a couple of weeks over a few evenings, couldn't I?
Exactly. And so it's really useful to think about it like that because we can break it down. And also, just because you've got 10 chapters of 5,000 words, that doesn't mean that's like an average.
Yeah.
Like one chapter might have 6,000 words, one chapter might have 3,000 words and, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but as I said before, that is not everything that is involved in writing even the first draft of a book, which is why I think this is a bit misleading. So I wanted to look in a bit more detail about what is involved in writing a book. So let's go right back to the beginning. What's the very first thing that you have to do?
You have to know what you're going to write about.
Yeah, so we're thinking about your big book idea, basically. So you might have a vague idea, and if you're thinking, I want to write a book, you almost certainly do have a vague idea of what you're going to write about, rather than just, I want to write a book. Although quite often I'm like, I want to write another book, and then I'm like, I don't know what to write about. And so that goes nowhere. But you will need to give your big book idea more thought and go through a process to validate your ideas and refine it so that it actually works for a book. So it's all very well to think, I want to write a book about pandas, for example.
Right.
Or, okay, I want to write a book about houseplants. And you think, okay, that's a very large topic.
Yes.
A really large topic. So let's narrow it down. Like, what kind of houseplants? It's like, I really like cactuses. Okay, cool. We're going to write a book about houseplant cacti. Awesome. And then you can refine that even further. It's like, okay, so why do you want to write about this? What is this for? Is this a how to care for cactuses? Is it a history of cactuses? Is it, what is it?
Yeah.
So we're thinking, okay, you've got your big idea and you're going to need to do a bunch more thought on that. And that takes time. And how much time it takes is going to depend on a bunch of stuff, and also doesn't take into account the fact that it's probably going to change a little bit as you write the book as well.
Sure, so because the process of writing a book is a big old session of thinking, isn't it?
Exactly. So we're not even going to think about that. We're just going to think about the beginning bit of thinking about your idea, which let's say that's a week of tinkering. Which there will probably be some writing done as well because you'll be doing like mind mapping or however you get your ideas down on paper, and you'll be talking to people about it hopefully, and getting help with validating your ideas basically. So let's say there's a week of that at the beginning. There's also, what else do we need to do if we're going to write a book?
Well, I guess there's the process of writing the thing, but after that, before that,
yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, research. Yeah.
Good point. Unless you know everything you need to know about everything.
Do you know what? Even then, I would even people who know their subject inside out and can just write a book, I would say still would benefit from doing research. And there's a couple of reasons why. So, because and this is this is something that people might not think about. It's like, if I'm writing my memoir or my autobiography or whatever, then I already know that is my story. No, you don't, because there's going to be an awful lot of memories that you need to dig out, not just from your own head, but from the people around you, the people you grew up with,
the context of what was happening at the time, and all sorts of things.
So much stuff. And so, there's an incredible amount of research. Probably memoir and autobiography is one of the most research-heavy genres, actually. Even if it doesn't always feel like that, there's going to be a lot of digging into your own head. But if you're thinking about, other nonfiction, you're almost never going to be just pulling everything out of your head, even if you know as much as you need to know, because you might want to bring in other points of view. You might want to research what's the latest stuff that's going on. When you decided to write the book, especially if you're in a fast-moving industry.
Yeah, you might want to research who disagrees with you.
Yeah,
and who has a contrasting opinion or a conflicting opinion or.
And I would say you should. If you want to write the best book you can write, I think that's a really valuable thing to do. You need to be able to argue against the people. You need to be able to argue, you need
to have an understanding of these people, don't you? If you're going to write. Yeah.
And, also related to that, you know, a lot of people will write their nonfiction book because they want to persuade us of something in some way, whether it's to change the way we behave or think or believe. You know, almost all writing is written to persuade somebody to do something. Not all of it, but, you know, a lot of it. And so to do that, you have to meet people where they are, and you have to understand where people are coming from if they disagree with you, or if they, you know, if they're not convinced yet. It's like, well, why? You know, you need to understand. If you it's like in debate, we don't really do debate in the UK in schools, but I know in the States there are like debate clubs and things like that. And I know that one of the most challenging and fascinating things that you can possibly do as part of debate club is be given the opposing argument, something that you disagree with, because you have to then go out and learn about that opposing argument. And that can be a really challenging thing to do, because, you know, to go and learn all about something that you might viscerally disagree with is really uncomfortable.
Sure.
But I think it's incredibly valuable, not just for writing and making arguments, but also for, you know, growing as a human. So yeah, there's all of that as well. You might want to research other books in your genre or industry, which I think is a good idea. It's like, has this already been said 50,000 times? What are you bringing to it that's new? What new angle? What's missing? You know, other writers that you like. So I read an awful lot of David Sedaris because I love his writing, and I just feel like I don't want to write like him. I want to write like me, but I want to write a bit like him. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
You want to write with the same impact and warmth and
yes,
feeling.
Yeah, all of that stuff. So yeah, and luckily, you know what? There's a lot of research to be done, but luckily I have a podcast episode for that, which I actually reissued last week.
Oh.
So hopefully you will be listening to this and thinking, oh yeah, research. Go back and listen to it. Or if you want to listen to the very original one, it was episode 228. Link is in the show notes.
That sounds outrageous.
I know, I did my research. And what else do we need to do when we're writing a book?
Well, yeah, it's not all just. You need to do the edits, the beta readers.
Thinking. Yeah, we need to think.
I thought we'd just done that.
Well,
we did the researching.
That's not necessarily, no. Sometimes writing is just staring out of a window while your brain processes stuff in the background. Sometimes it's talking to people. Sometimes it's just like going for a walk. So there's that as well. But yes, also, after you've written your first draft, there's edits, beta readers, proofreading, cover design, interior design and layout, all the other gubbins that go together with publishing a book. So when someone tells you it's possible to write and publish your book in 30 days or 90 days or whatever, give them your skeptical face. Because it is entirely possible to write a first draft in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. But that's not the end of the story. And if you're putting your first draft out as a published book, shame on you.
Yeah.
We don't do that. You know, there's a lot of stuff that will go into it that you won't want people to necessarily read. You know, and it's I think it's disrespectful to the reader.
Yeah, your first draft is an exercise in generating content
and organizing your thoughts. And, yeah. So let's think about here then the first draft, and let's do a little timeline for that. So we're just thinking about the first draft. One, you're going to spend about a week-ish, maybe you'll spend about a week on your big book idea and the outline, which is, if you do those two things, you're going to be refining your idea.
You've probably arrived at the point of, you know, day one, week one, with a desire to write a book and some idea. This is the refinement process, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we're thinking about
your thoughts.
Yeah, and going into the detail and thinking, you know, where's it going to go and all that kind of thing. Then you're going to spend probably a couple of weeks, 1 to 2 weeks, doing any research that you know you need to do. And then you're going to spend maybe 12 weeks to write your 55,000 words, as we broke down earlier.
Yeah, so that's your, 1,000 words a night with a few nights off, with 2 or 3 nights off a week.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. And then it'll be ready for editing, which is great. And that's just under 4 months to get to that point.
Yeah.
If you're writing a longer book. Can you do it quicker? Of course you can do it quicker. People do it quicker. Those people might be able to devote more time to their book than you can. Their word count per day may be higher, but I am assuming that you're busy and you don't want to overload yourself. And I'm also assuming that, like most of us, you can't put aside everything else to work exclusively on your book.
You have some responsibilities that you need to, fulfill.
And so I think that 3 to 4 months is a perfectly reasonable amount of time to aim to get your first draft done. Might do it quicker? Cool. Might take you longer? Also cool. But what about after that? What about the edit? I want to give people an idea of how long it's going to take to actually get their book published out there. So...
Headspace,
yeah. I would love I love it if my clients will take a couple of weeks off to walk away from the book and not even think about it. At least 1 week.
It's really difficult to edit something you just wrote.
Yeah.
Because you know what you meant to say, you know how you were thinking at the time you wrote it.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you just write something and then try and edit it, you will miss things. You will have assumptions in your brain.
There will also be thinking faults as well in there because, when we're getting our ideas out of our head, they tend to be, for a lot of us, they tend to be quite jumbled. And so when you walk away from your book for a week or two, even if you're not thinking about it, your subconscious brain will be processing shit in the background. And so I often come back to stuff that I've written, like even a couple of days ago, and I'll be like, okay, cool, I'm going to rewrite this completely. And it's such a better piece of writing for that than just kind of whacking out something that might be okay. It might even be pretty good. But how much better could it be with a little bit of space? So I say 1 to 2 weeks to walk away from it. Don't even think about it. And then spend a couple of weeks when you come back to do a structural edit and get all of your thoughts together, make sure that it makes sense, make sure it flows, make sure there's nothing major missing. After that, I would spend a week editing it, at least a week. This is like really vague ideas, by the way. I might spend a bit more time on some of this stuff, but edit it or get it edited for the details, for the kind of flow and all the rest of it. And then I would send it away to beta readers for their feedback and help to make it better. And I would allow at least 2 weeks for that.
And that's asking a lot of somebody to say, read this book this week, please, and then give me feedback next week. Yeah.
And you will have amazing people who will be willing to do that for you, because we all do. But yeah, you want a couple of weeks for that. And then when you get those suggestions back from your beta readers, spend 1 to 2 weeks making those changes. Maybe a couple of weeks doing final edits and proofreading. And then maybe a week doing the layout. You'll hopefully have sorted the cover while you were doing other stuff. So that's like a process that do not design your own cover unless you are actually a graphic designer or an artist. Get someone else to do it, and you can do that while the other stuff is going on. And then you want to allow at least 2 weeks for printing. And while it's printing, for dealing with getting your book online, do not underestimate how long and how fucking fiddly the final stages and checks and things are. Because when you are printing your book, you also will want to get a printed proof. Do not get a large quantity of your books printed without spending the time to get a printed proof first, because you will have missed things.
Yes.
And so it's really, really important. And I can't even imagine how upsetting it would be to have 200 copies of your book with a giant mistake in it that you could have caught if you'd only had
with the wrong ISBN number on the back.
Yeah.
It's
happened.
Yeah. With
a mistake on the spine.
With a typo on the spine.
Which has happened with a client of mine. Literally, like, everybody missed it. Literally everybody missed it. And sometimes that shit happens, So make sure that you leave enough time to do proper checks on these things. And any good book printer will insist on, you'll have to argue with them really hard about not sending you a proof copy.
Because they will want to give you
a proof copy. They don't want to print 200 copies of a book that's going to be pulped. That's really depressing. So yeah, that is a really rough idea, and gives you a total of 29 weeks from blank page to book in your hand, which is just over 7 months. So yeah, and that's a good turnaround.
That's writing 800 words a day.
Yeah, with all of the other gubbins and waiting for other people to do things like typesetters and printers and people like that.
Yeah.
So, by the way, if you're working with external people like editors and proofreaders and printers, talk to them early and get them booked in for a couple of reasons. First, the good ones get booked up real quick. And second, it will give you a deadline to work to, which is also a useful thing.
Yes.
So yeah, I work with private clients over 6 months to take them to kind of the final checks before printing stage. Some people get printed, some people have a little bit more work to do afterwards. As I say, it depends on how much time you've got to write. And I work over 3 months with my Weird and Wonderful Book Society clients to get them to the end of the first draft, or thereabouts. So, and that's, like I say, this is really rough. And it very much depends on your personal circumstances and the book you're writing and a whole load of other things. But I think that's a reasonable timeline.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I think the key, though, is really to get into the habit of writing every day and increasing your speed and skills. The better you can write first draft-wise, the less editing you're going to have to do later. And I have something that can help you with that, funnily enough.
Nice.
I have an advent calendar, or a monthly writing prompts calendar. It's totally free. You can go to moxiebooks.co.uk/calendar. You don't even have to give me your email address, although I would really like it if you signed up for my emails as well. because they're good. But the calendar's awesome. People are really enjoying doing it on social media. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm getting to see what people are writing, and it's really cool. But yeah, the idea is to get you to start and maintain a writing habit, daily writing habit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what's the takeaway?
Go and get a free calendar full of writing prompts and things to get you moving.
Yeah, and also don't underestimate how long some of this stuff is gonna take.
Yeah, skeptical eyebrow to anybody who says you can have your book done in 2 months or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's true, but just check it. So I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. It was, as always, really good fun to make. I think this is possibly the last episode before Christmas. So if you're listening just before Christmas, then I hope you have a wonderful time. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, and I hope you have a wonderful break if you're having a break. And if this time of year is not so good for you, then I'm sending you lots of love and hoping that you are doing okay. And I also would like to invite anyone who wants to start 2023 with a bit of a bang to join me for the next Microbook Magic course, which I am beginning on January the 10th. You are cordially invited to come join me. All of the links, all of the information is in the show notes, or you can drop me an email or find me on social media, and all of the details will be there too. At some point, I will have a proper sales page for this thing. But I don't at the moment. So thank you so much for listening. And also, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the next episode, but this is the last podcast that my amazing assistant Harriet will be helping me out with, because she is going on to focus on her own amazing business. She is a burlesque performer and teacher, and I am so proud of her. But I'm also absolutely bereft. She's been with me for so many years. I don't even know how many years, and I literally could not function without her. So Harriet, thank you so much for everything you have done. Honestly, there aren't enough words. There aren't enough words to express how amazing you are and how well you look after me. So I love you so much. Thank you. And I know that Joe feels the same way. So yeah, we think you're amazing. And thank you to Podfly, as always, for making us sound great. And thank you to you, dear listener, for listening in. I will be back same time next week, I hope. Hopefully with something new. See you then. Ta-ta. Thanks so much for listening. Check out the show notes at moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast for links to everything we've mentioned in this episode. Remember to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you'd like to hear more from Notes in the Margin, you can sign up to get regular emails from Vicky into your inbox at moxiebooks.co.uk/notes in the margin. We'll be back same time next week.